Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Larkin, one half of the S&M Show podcast, and I'm back today with another interview. I am not alone, however. For this interview, I am joined by my fellow colleague on the Max Wrestling podcast. I'm talking about none other than the Butcher. Butcher, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic, Mike. Thanks for having me, my brother.
Please.
This is a big thing for me because I'm a big mark for the big guy, and you get no bigger than this one.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce for this show, we have none other than former WWE superstar, former TNA superstar, current New Japan wrestler, one half of the Killer Elite Squad, none other than Mr. Lance Hoyt, Lance Archer. Lance, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How are you guys today?
We're doing well. We're actually very much looking forward to speaking with you, man. And before we even got on here, I was going to say to you, so, dude, I know you had the surgery like you mentioned, but 18 years in the business. I believe you debuted in July of 2000, right?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Nice, man. So that's awesome. And talk about being trained by, who was actually your trainer? I remember it was, I forgot the gentleman's name. Who was the guy that trained you up there in Texas?
His name was Solo Faitala. As far as wrestling's concerned, he hadn't really made any kind of a name. He was an independent guy. He'd wrestled around Texas and other places, depending on where he lived. He did have some training under Ivan Putski because the school I originally started at had Ivan and Scott and them involved in it before I was there. And then once I was there, they recently just left right before I got there. So he actually went through some training with Ivan. So a lot of that got passed down to me through Solo and whatnot. So he's an amazing guy. I actually lost contact with him for years, and it was just maybe a few months ago, I found out that he lived in the Dallas area. I got in contact with his wife through Facebook, and we all went and had lunch one day. So it was a really cool experience getting to see him again.
Nice. So I was going to talk about the PCW run here as well, and
okay.
Some of your early names. I mean, we had Lance Steele, and there was Breakdown. And then we had, one of the prominent ones that you had was Shadow. You were part of the Dark Circle. Talk about the run with PCW.
PCW was an amazing place because, independent wrestling, a lot of times, shows run, from the time that I've been in this business to now, you might get a show that runs once a month, and if you do get one that runs consistently once a month, then you're usually with a good program. PCW was an amazing place because it ran weekly. They had their own facility within a gym. The family that owned PCW owned a gym. It was called The Gym. Like I said, they started running weekly shows. They were on TV locally in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then ultimately the arena that we had, it was an old converted movie theater that at the end point had 4 huge screens that, both entrance videos and live feeds of what was happening in the ring were broadcast on. Everybody had their own entrance music and videos and stuff. And, we filmed backstage vignettes prior to the show to help set up storylines. Again, because it was a weekly show, you had things happening that helped set up what was our equivalent of a big show or a pay-per-view that happened once every 2 to 3 months. And, they were running at the peak probably 300 to 400 people weekly. And then for the big shows, anywhere from 700 to 1,000. And that's beyond capacity for the building that we were in. And the fan base was just extremely passionate. So it was a really fun time to be a part of wrestling, especially so early on in my career. And then invaluable for the simple fact that it was in front of TV. You had to learn to work with the hard cameras and the floating cameras, and you had to learn to cut backstage promos and live mic time in front of crowds that was not just for the live audience, but for a TV audience that was going to be watching, every Saturday at 11 a.m. or whenever they would broadcast it. So for learning how to work in this business beyond just a live show environment on the independent scene, working towards what would ultimately for myself become TNA and the WWE and things like that, it was an invaluable learning tool because of the TV aspect that PCW carried. And then getting to work weekly, it's something that most guys in this business, unless you get to a TNA or a WWE, don't get to experience. Even Ring of Honor doesn't run a weekly program. They tape once in a while. They have their live events and stuff, but they'll have breaks in between and whatnot. They're not running every week, and that's something that PCW did, and it's something you only get, like I said, when you're working right now with WWE. TNA back in the day when I was with them, when I started, they did a weekly Wednesday thing, and then we would do a bi-weekly Impact taping in Orlando. But still, like I said, for an independent company, it was beyond top-notch and beyond invaluable, and a learning curve for me in the business.
As far as PCW goes, and we're actually going to get to TNA, two of some of your biggest opponents there that you actually wrestled were former WWE superstar Paul London, and you actually got to work with Ahmed Johnson in there. Talk about those experiences.
Yeah, Paul and I actually, and some people don't understand this or know this, that Paul and I actually started at the same place. He just started about 6 months before I did, and then again, he was gone and working independence and spreading his wings in the business. And it was at the Southwest Wrestling Federation in Austin where we both started. He actually trained with Ivan when Putski was a part of all that. So getting to work with him on the Texas independent scene, we worked in a lot of places all over the place. I don't know if he enjoyed it, but I certainly did. We had some really good matches, and actually probably one of my most memorable matches in all of my PCW career was working with Paul. And we had an amazing match. It was just the fans were beyond on the edge of their seat, the way we structured it, the way the match went and finished, and everything that was involved in it. It was one of the best experiences on the independent level, and especially at PCW. And then we're talking about Ahmed Johnson. Ahmed was a guy that, wasn't that far out of his WWF time when he came and worked with us at PCW, and he wanted to be there, and I specifically was the person he chose to work with. So, wow. He was really, really good to me and really good to the company. A lot of times you run into guys who've been at that level and then they're working the independent level and they don't really have a good attitude about themselves. And, at that time, Ahmed had an amazing attitude. Like I said, he saw the potential that PCW had. He saw the potential, hopefully, in myself. And he wanted to be there and he wanted to work with me. And it was a really cool experience getting to work with somebody who, again, and I didn't even fully understand it at the time, had been at that level and at such a high level. So it was a really cool experience, both of them, for me, and PCW brought in a lot of guys working with the Sabus and, the just most recent former NWA heavyweight champion, Tim Storm, was a guy that was a part of my Dark Circle that you mentioned earlier, and to see where he was. And if you saw Tim Storm back then and you see Tim Storm now, you wouldn't recognize him. Physically, he was not in the shape, and he didn't look like what he does today. It's an amazing transformation what Tim Storm has done to himself and for himself as he's become an older gentleman. And I'm not knocking him, and if you're listening, Tim, I'm sorry, because you're older than me, brother. But he was not in good shape back then, and now he's freaking phenomenal, and it's amazing to see.
Nice. So we're actually going to get into the TNA run now. And Butcher, my colleague here, please, I know you have some questions. I'll let you go first, sir.
Well, first of all, I remember when you came in to TNA.
Where are you from, Butcher?
I'm from the UK.
Okay, cool.
UK. First of all, I remember when you came in with the man himself, Kid Cash. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at you and thinking, wow, this guy's big. Big, because at the time TNA didn't have anyone on the roster really, other than Abyss, who came through as Kit Cash's right hand man as well, and and I looked at you and I thought, this guy's gonna mess people up, and I wasn't surprised really. I've heard a lot of things people talk. They don't talk real, positive about Cash. What was your opinions of Kid Cash?
Again, another dude who was extremely helpful to me. My experience around Cash for myself was a really good one, and I think, excuse me, that comes from the fact that, they kind of put an unknown guy with him at the time, but when they brought me in, me even getting that position was a crazy moment because Johnny Swinger at the time was supposed to be tagging with him in a tag tournament. And Johnny Swinger's wife was having a baby, so he went, and rightfully so, to be with his wife and see his newborn child. But they needed the spot filled, so one of the Harris brothers who I'd worked with on one of my tryout matches had mentioned that I looked like a bigger version of Cash. So they just randomly stuck me with Cash. But then when I came in, my attitude was very much, I'm here to learn, I'm here to get better, I'm here to become, hopefully, a star, and this is my first opportunity. So, I wasn't there to overshadow no pun intended, Cash or anybody. I was there to try to make my mark and make my place and learn from somebody who had been in the business, who was a part of TNA. And I think he saw that and understood that, and he saw the benefit of me being a partner with him. In our first match together went extremely well. It was a tag match in that tag tournament that we won. And like I said, the match went extremely well, and I think beyond some people's expectations, not knowing exactly what I do and how I would do. And for Cash, I think he just saw me as a good partner because we had such different dynamics. And again, my attitude was very much help me, teach me, and let's make this good. And he saw that. So for me, he was amazing. He would help me. He would give me advice. He made sure to put me in good positions to look good and look good for the team. I understand what other people's opinions of Cash are because he is a hothead. He's gotten himself in trouble many times with different companies that he's worked with for the talent that he has. He should have been probably bigger stars in every company that he was a part of, but he allowed, maybe his passion to take hold a little too often. So I can see from other people's perspective what they would think of Cash. But for me personally, he was great. He was nothing but good. He taught me, he helped me, and he helped me move along in my career, both at TNA and the business.
And the thing, too, that I'll add to there as well is because you mentioned the tag tournament. I got to ask you, what was it like working with Loki and Chris Daniels in that tournament?
Again, amazing. Guys, I didn't know how good all these guys were because I was kind of, sheltered in my little independent wrestling world in Dallas. I knew of TNA, but I didn't know of the guys that were working it. I didn't know their ability and where they've been and how good they were and stuff like that. And then again, I believe my attitude helped my progression with those guys because it was a great experience. Low-key was one of the first guys that he understood what the company was trying to accomplish with me and wanted to help make that work, and where a lot of guys see other guys, especially big guys, and they go, oh, this guy's just got a job because he's big and I'm going to do everything I can to basically bury him. Neither one of those guys, and especially low-key at that moment, didn't do that. They were there to help me, and that's exactly what they did. They made me look like a monster, and they made me look like a star, and it was a really cool experience, and especially them putting us over for the tag titles, which was in my second week being at TNA, but for TV it was like the third or fourth week because it was a tournament they were doing. So it's, again, a whirlwind experience, but nothing but really cool because everybody I worked with me and helped me, and it was just, again, made friendships and learned so much from each and every one of those guys.
So after the Dallas run, I know you and Cash were still doing your thing. You were going by Lance Hoyt, and you guys actually got to work with AMW. Talk about working with Chris Harris and James Storm.
Another cool experience. We had a lot of good matches with them. One of my first tryout matches was against Chris and James and whatnot. We were the tag champs going into the very first Impact taping in Orlando. Again, as a wrestler, you never want to lose in that sense, but you understand the business, and if you understand the business, you do what's best for the business at the time, and you can make yourself look really good even in a losing capacity. And that's kind of what we were. We were going to be on the very first ever nationally broadcast, TV show for TNA Impact, and that was going to be, on Fox Sports Network. It was at a crazy hour, at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. But it was still, since WCW closed down, it was the first company to truly be on TV, and we were a part of the very first one. So to even be a part of the very first one was really cool. So, we had that match, and it worked really well, and they were, they beat us for the tag titles, but it was a really cool experience working with them. And, at different ways and different capacities, I worked with them throughout my time in TNA, whether it was, in singles competition or tag competition or different versions of teams and whatnot. So it was, again, really cool. Again, I don't have anything really negative to say about anybody that I worked with at that time. My 5 years at TNA was a really cool time, even though a lot of it changed, even though I believe a lot more could have been capitalized on by the company with myself. But regardless, it was still a really amazing experience.
Awesome. One thing that I did write down as far as highlights go, and God rest his soul, the late great Chris Candido, you actually got the team with Chris against Sonny, Siaki, and Apollo at Lockdown. Talk about that.
It's such an interesting experience from top to bottom for the simple fact that, the Lockdown pay-per-view initially was kind of a joke gone awry. Because it was the first of all TNA's first. We just started the pay-per-views, and this was going to be the first lockdown, and they were trying to put together the structure of the pay-per-view and whatnot. And I think, from my understanding, somebody jokingly said, why don't we do just all the matches in the cage? And I think it was Dixie at the time was like, yeah, let's do that. And nobody knew. It was like, oh God, we're going to do the whole pay-per-view inside the cage. And, that had never been done before as far as I know. And, but, the boss said, let's do it. So that's what we were going to do. But, the reins were really taking off everybody. Remember, we had a meeting before the show, and it was like, guys, we don't know what's going to happen here, but this is what we're dealt with. So go out there and have the best matches you can in every capacity. Nobody's going to tell you no anything. We just need this to be a success. And so it was a really cool moment in the business, because too often I think as wrestlers with a company, we're told, no, don't do that. You can't do that. We're doing this later in the show, so you can't do anything even close to similar because of that, and so on and so forth. So sometimes, the handcuffs are put on guys, and this was one of those times where the handcuffs were taken off, and we were let go. So we were I got to be part of a lot of first. I'm in the first match on the pay-per-view of lockdown of this all cage pay-per-view. So it's one of those crazy moments. It's like, all right, first impression, here we go. We had a story set up with the Naturals and all that stuff, and it was me and Candido, and against Sonny and Apollo, and it happened in the very opening of the match. Like, they were just running some basic spots, and Candido just took a bump, and when he took that bump, unfortunately, his foot got caught up underneath him. And it's happened time and time again in this business, where different guys have caught their feet on the mat and broken their ankles, broken their legs, things of that nature. Neville did it not that long ago, working with Jericho. It's happened time and time again, but unfortunately, this was one of those times where it happened. It happened at the beginning of the match. They got Candido out of there. I basically finished the match in a handicap scenario, which was not what we were supposed to be doing, but we couldn't just stop the match, in essence, because it was the first match on this pay-per-view. So we kept going and did what we could to make it work. Candido, being the professional he was, didn't want to leave the company high and dry. He'd been working with the Naturals. He went and had it set, and then he was set to have the surgery. He had that, and then we did the TV tapings, and he probably shouldn't have been a part of that. You just broke your ankle. Luckily, it was a clean break. No ligament damage, and his boot saved him on that aspect. But with the bone break, he probably shouldn't have been up and moving around. He didn't have a walking cast on or anything. But again, he didn't want to leave the company high and dry, so he went out there and did some managerial stuff. And then we all flew home, which he probably shouldn't have been flying home. And then unfortunately, a blood clot formed and he passed away. It was a crazy whirlwind week, because I remember a friend of mine texted me, like, let's say we went home on Wednesday and he passed away on Thursday, and my friend's texting me like Thursday night or Friday, and he's like, hey, Candido died. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I was like, I basically hung up the phone. They were like, no, for real, like, your blood clot and he died. And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. It was an insane moment, knowing that we'd just been there, we'd just been working with each other, and how fast and crazy and quick that happened. So it was insane all around, considering everything that was going on, the pay-per-view itself, the freak accident, and then unfortunately his passing.
I have a couple more highlights as well from your Impact run, but Butcher, please, if you have any more questions as well as far as the Impact run, go ahead, man.
I watched TNA since 2002, and I think it first aired in the UK in 2003. And I think the one thing that always, and Mike knows exactly where I'm going with this. The one thing I've always prided myself on as a wrestling fan is the key word wrestling. I watch all products of wrestling. Some I've grown up with as a child, obviously WWE, and I'm not a big fan of the current product as a whole, because I think it's lost the key term, inverted commas, wrestling. TNA was one of them things that when it came on the scene, it was just changing the way everyone looked at wrestling in general. It was innovative. It was setting standards in terms of, the little guys not getting so much looked at as little guys, but, guys that were willing to push the boundaries. Was there anyone in that company, that kind of like made you go, wow? Do you know what I mean? This guy's, something else.
Right, and that list goes on and on, man. I mean, that's hard to break down because there were so many amazing talents. And I mean, the first one that I think you have to recognize because of the success he's having, even now within the company that you say you're not a fan of, is AJ. AJ is one of those guys that the phenomenal name doesn't do it justice for the simple fact that every person that he seems to ever work with, like if you have a bad match with AJ Styles, either A, he's on his deathbed and shouldn't have been out there, which he still probably would have a good match, or B, you are that freaking horrible that you couldn't even do your part because he is so good. I remember specifically I had a singles match with him back in the old Asylum days. And this was when I was with Kid Cash, and I remember specifically I had the match. It was a really good match. Got done, and it was one of those things where Terry Taylor actually gave me a very big compliment. He goes, "I think you just solidified yourself here. Basically, nobody thought you'd be able to go out there and keep up with AJ. I did, to my credit, to whatever degree, and it was a really big compliment coming from a guy like Terry Taylor, who was like, that was really good. I think you just basically solidified yourself within this company." And maybe it was a test and I didn't know it and I passed it, I guess, to whatever degree. To fast forward to a few times that I got to work with AJ during my TNA time, and then a match I had with AJ while I was in New Japan during the G1 was one of my favorite matches I've had in all of my time in New Japan, and then to see what he's doing in WWE, considering he was a guy that, from my understanding, Vince never saw as being a major star because of his size. And he's transcended that immensely. He's gone, stepped in the ring with all of Vince's top guys and made them look that much better.
Exactly.
Because AJ is so freaking good. And what is this, his second heavyweight title run? He's held other titles. He's just made everyone understand how freaking good he is. And his promos are fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but that was never his forte, and he's doing it with his ability, his body. And I think, personally, and it's like how I like it myself, and if I'm talking too long, I apologize. My time in Japan, if I'd have done this prior to what I did in WWE, I think my story would be very different. I think, and I'm not taking anything away from AJ, because he's always been phenomenal, but working in Japan adds an element of fight to guys' abilities and their careers and their personas that maybe they don't have before they're working in Japan. And I think him, who he was before, and then adding that strong style Japanese fight element and then going to WWE made him so much better. And it's a crazy thing to say about AJ, but him adding that element, working in Japan with guys like Okada and Tanahashi and Shinsuke and all the guys that he worked with at the top level there, and then going into WWE, it just made him that much better.
It's almost like you have to work that extra bit harder in Japan, isn't it?
It's a fight. It's a fight.
Yeah. Thanks, Lance.
A couple more stuff with the Impact Wrestling run. Some of your prominent singles matches that you had, Lance, is, I can't be amiss if I don't mention this one, your match with Abyss at Sacrifice, and you actually worked with Monty Brown at Bound for Glory. Talk about those experiences.
Again, firsts in the TNA, all part of that first real big year of TNA when Hoyt was actually running kind of wild. Credit to the fans on that one. Actually, a friend of mine now, his name's Michael Kerrigan. He lives out in Orlando. He kind of helped start the Hoytomania movement. Working with Abyss, that was actually supposed to be something more as far as the storyline concerned. It ultimately became a one-and-done match, unfortunately. It was a really cool moment because the match itself was really good. Abyss and I were big guys working in a pace and a style that most people didn't expect from guys that were both 6'6" and taller, and he's 300 plus pounds and he's a freaking monster. And I've the one and only time I've actually done the springboard Van Terminator, I busted that out of my career and didn't kill myself doing it. just it was one of those moments that, again, I think opened a lot of people's eyes. I wish it would have been capitalized on more past that, but it is my number one match. Like, if people ask me, what's my most memorable match in TNA, that's it. It is working.
I was going to ask you that myself, I was actually going to say, watching your career develop in TNA, I actually thought that match was your standout moment, and I actually thought from then they'd have built you into this monster machine, stuck the strap on you, and I was just like, I was like, why? What are they doing with this guy? Why are they not going that extra mile? You took it this far. Finish it.
Well, I think
and I was like, wow.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately that is the story of TNA's business mantra that has been their downfall. You brought up Monty. Monty Brown is I consider him a brother in life. We still, last night we were texting about the national championship football game. We've stayed in contact the whole time, again, like brothers in life. To get to work with him at the very first Bound for Glory, him beating me up in front of my mom because she came to the show, and we got to work and do that match. And there was a few times that he is my prime example, and I may be a little biased because of our friendship, but he is my prime example as far as TNA of a homegrown talent that they absolutely should have capitalized on and never did. Because as a heavyweight, he physically matched anything that people saw as heavyweight champion in the business, that they envisioned from the WCW days and the WWF/WWE days. He was the guy that transcended all that the wrestling fans saw as a true heavyweight. And he had the personality, he had the charisma, he had the ability to be that guy, and he was never made that guy. Like, TNA, to whatever degree, and I don't understand why, like, every time TNA took a step forward as a company, they would step back with some of their homegrown talent. And it was an effort with guys that they would bring in that had name value. And there's no discrediting those guys that would come in with name value. But it was like, oh, well, we're going to become a bigger company now, so we need to get on the backs of bigger name guys. Instead of relying on the guys that helped get them to that point, they would go, oh, you guys wait, we'll get back to you. But there was a lot of guys that they just never got back to. And Monty was, in my opinion, the number one example of TNA truly dropping the ball on somebody that should have been their guy, the face of the company, their champion, and all that stuff. And just time and time again, they would randomly turn him heel, or he would, instead of winning the title, he would lose to somebody so that they could win the title. And it's one of those things. It is what it is. It was what it was, and it was very unfortunate for a lot of guys.
Another thing that I have here, and we'll close out some stuff with TNA, then we'll move on to WWE and get to Japan as well, Lance. Another one that was really prominent, I mean, besides that we mentioned, Kid Cash and your tag team run with him, two other guys that I remember you tag team with, obviously, was Ron the Truth Killings, and you actually got to show out some moves there, while he was doing the freestyle rap to Happy Holidays, yes. And
I can dance, by the way, man.
Hey, man, dude, those were some skills that kills right there. I remember that. That was awesome. And you also got a chance to do, obviously, the Jimmy Rave, the Rock and Rave infection with Christy Hemme. Talk about both of those runs.
As far as Ron and I were concerned, it was a random pairing, and I think my fun story about that is that I could dance, and like once in a while, we would, as people, we would go out in Orlando to a club or whatnot, and I think we went to some club one night, and like Jeff and all them were there. I just started freaking going to town, having a good time, dancing my butt off, and everybody's like, "What the hell is happening here?" Vince Russo came back to the company, and he was always a supporter of mine, which was really cool. And I have to give Vince some credit, because there were a lot of things that a lot of the fans thought were Vince's ideas and bashed him for, and he had nothing to do with, which was kind of comical at the same time, because people were chanting "Fire Russo" and whatnot for ideas that he had no hand in whatsoever. As far as the dancing and Ron and I were concerned, he did have a hand in that. I remember we were walking backstage one day, and he was like, "Bro, I heard you can dance, bro." And I was like, "Yeah, I can dance all right." And he goes, "Bro, you gotta dance." I went, "Okay." And the first on the road pay-per-view, I don't remember the name of it. I had a pre-show match with with Bobby Roode, and it was the night they debuted Tracy Brooks as his manager, and they've been running the storyline of who's his new manager. He beats me, but then proceeds to beat me up, and then Ron makes the big save, and they're like, okay, when Ron makes the big save, he's going to help you up, and then his music's going to play, and then you got to dance with him. And I went, okay, I'm going to dance after I just got beat up, and they're like, yeah, it's okay, it's just the pre-show, and I was like, all right. So sure enough, that's how the dancing gimmick got started. So that was short-lived but fun. And then as far as Jimmy and I were concerned, Jimmy and I's partnership and with Christy, congratulations, just had quads.
Yes.
You know that. That's amazing.
It is.
Jimmy was brought in. Again, Russo was a fan of Jimmy's from his independent stuff and his Ring of Honor days. Was bringing him in. He said, I'm going to tag you guys. I was like, okay. We were randomly put together, and our debut together was in an elimination gauntlet match of some sort. He still was just being Jimmy Rave, and I was still just being Lance Hoyt. And we kind of coined the name Rock and Rave Infection, which some people get that wrong and try to call it Connection. I was like, no. We were the Infection. And unfortunately, people would say, well, if he's the Rave and if you're the Rock and he's the Rave, what does that make Christy? And I was like, hey, that's not nice. They put us together, and still to this day, people remember that, and we had a lot of fun with it, and the dynamic between he and I, and his ability and my ability, and then Christy, who can actually sing really well, choosing to sing really badly, and Jimmy never knowing what city we're in, and me always asking for random things like a ham sandwich and a fifth of whiskey, and just we had fun with it, and the fans had fun with it. Again, another thing that we all felt could have gone so much further, and we were kind of the only heel tag team working against like LAX and Motor City Machine Guns and stuff like that. Like we were the only heel team working against all these babyface teams, but we were never given a chance to be the team that they all chased. We were just kind of the team they all beat up, and we had really good matches. We actually had a triple threat match at I think a Destination X. Motor City Machine Guns, us, and LAX, and we were the opening match. And I remember D'Lo Brown was our agent. And, he's like, guys, it's the opening match, and we just need you to go out there and have a good one, start the show off right. And we're like, okay, no problem. We go out there and have this match, and it came off amazing, to everybody's credit. And we get to the back, and D'Lo was just ecstatic. He was just like, that's how you start a pay-per-view. Oh my God, he was just so happy, because ultimately we make him look good too, because again, he was our agent. And it was really cool that we all had this dynamic, and they just unfortunately didn't do more with it. And like I said, to this day, people still, once they figure out that it was me with the Rock and Rave, they're like, oh my God, I remember that. That was so funny.
So another thing, so before we get to WWE, I'll say to you, Butcher, anything else you'd like to add about Lance's Impact run?
No. I think it's all mainly which we've hit on what exactly I wanted to know, really.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the WWE run. So let's talk about FCW, Lance. I believe in FCW you were originally Lance Archer, but then once you got to the roster, they actually tweaked it and you became Vance Archer. Talk about your FCW run.
Well, first off, that's absolutely incorrect.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I've heard that one before. Never was Lance Archer. Lance Archer, the first time it was Lance Archer was New Japan.
Yeah, Lance Archer is your father's name, isn't it?
Archer's my father's name. Lance is my name.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the Vance Archer Vance was a dusty choice. Basically, I came into FCW, which was kind of a whirlwind thing too, because I'll go. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, my things. Why is it doing that? Can
No
you guys
worries.
hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, sorry, my thing switched from my headphones to the speaker.
No problem.
My apologies. Anyway, my time at TNA ended when I was actually in Japan working for All Japan for a tour. Was told, hey, we need to have a conversation. I understood what it was about. Told them, like, all right, I just want my release if that's what's going on. I did my last match at TNA. Literally stayed in Florida, went and did a tryout for WWE at FCW at the time, and then within a week after the tryout is when I got offered the job with WWE. They wanted me to go to Florida, to Tampa, which I was okay with, and I think it was a good choice for the simple fact that learning to work within the WWE environment is really important, because it's a company that has a very specific way they want their superstars perceived and working, and so on and so forth. And especially, I think, back then, very different time than it is now. It's changed that much in these few years. So it was a good choice to go there. And again, the Vance came from Dusty. Dusty was like, they wanted to be Vance something else, and I asked if it could be Archer, because Archer's my dad's name, and they liked it, so that's kind of how Vance Archer came to be in FCW. But it was a really good experience, considering guys like Dr. Tom Pritchard, Norman Smiley, Billy Kidman, Steve Kern, the list goes on and on of the guys that were running FCW at the time, and the knowledge that they had and their willingness to help you if you showed the desire to be helped. It was a really cool place.
So one other couple big matches that you actually did when you were on the ECW brand, they started you off. We talk about the disaster pieces, just great promos. You did the thing with the enhancement talents, but one of the big matches that you actually had there, you wrestled Tommy Dreamer, you wrestled Goldust, you had a few with Shelton Benjamin. Talk about those experiences.
ECW as a whole, even though it kind of had its negative mark from the fan base because it was the WWE ECW version, not the original, it was a really good place. Again, like a stepping stone. NXT now, what it is what ECW in a sense should have and could have been, and what FCW ultimately, has become. It's that stepping stone, and it's really important, I think, for guys, if they're not going to get the rocket ship put up their butts for WWE, because it gave me and other guys. I mean, if you think about that old ECW product, CM Punk started on that ECW product. Kofi Kingston started on the ECW product. Sheamus started on the ECW product. So many guys that ultimately made names within the company, and some, like I said, like Sheamus, who's still there, started with that ECW product. I, unfortunately, like myself and the Dude Busters, Trent Beretta and Galen Croft and whatnot, came in at the very end of ECW. But it was a good place because, like you said, I got to work with Tommy Dreamer, who still is beyond influential in my career, working with me on his House of Hardcore and things that he's done for me from then till now. Goldust, who's just the never-ending engine that that won't quit, however you want to say that. Shelton, who's become a good friend of mine since then, to what we did in Japan together, and so I'm really happy and proud that he's back and doing well. Getting to work with all those guys, at the time, I might have been the guy that they may not have been one to work with, but I was beyond ecstatic to work with them because it was a chance to learn and it was a chance to grow. And again, because ECW was its own hour, it was its own product, it gave me a chance to be known by the WWE universe without being, just buried in the heap of guys that were trying to be on Raw and SmackDown at the time. It was unfortunate, in my opinion, that ECW shut down for guys like myself because, again, that platform was kind of taken away from us, and I was, put on the shelf for about 3 or 4 months before I came back with Kurt Hawkins, as the tag team that we had. But, it was a really hard transition for the fact that there are so many guys on Raw and SmackDown that ECW provided that kind of individual platform. It was a really cool time and experience to learn, to grow, and to kind of find yourself. And I feel like if ECW had continued and I'd had continued options and opportunities to grow within their company, it might have helped my career there as a whole.
Now, you did actually have a WrestleMania moment, WrestleMania 26. You competed in the pre-show Battle Royal. Talk about WrestleMania.
It's one of those things, man. The fact that I got to lace my boots up, walk down the ramp, and wrestle, regardless if it was just the pre-show, regardless of the fact that it was a battle royal, I still got to do it, man. I got to walk out in front of probably 50,000 of the 72,000 that were ultimately in the building, and I tried to take it in. I soaked it in. I'm good friends with his real name's Gabe Tuft. He was Tyler Rex back then. And when we were making our entrance, he was right behind me, and I was like, holy crap, man, can you believe this? He's like, no, man, this is really cool. And then he kicked me in my penis, I'll say penis, during the match, which was funny. I got kicked in the can I say the other word?
Yeah, please say it.
I got kicked in the dick by Tyler Rex. I took the Cobra. The only time the Cobra from Santino Morella's made anybody bleed was me during that Battle Royal, because he whacked me right in the mouth. And then was eliminated by Yoshitatsu, who again, another guy that has kind of become a friend throughout my time in the business and whatnot. So again, just beyond a cool experience for me all around, and to be able to walk out there in front of all those people and to see that and experience that, to have, regardless of what it was, my WrestleMania moment.
Now, you mentioned Kurt Hawkins. We're going to talk about the Gate Crashers team. You guys had some prominent matchups in there as well. You guys worked with MVP and Christian. You guys worked the tag match with Matt Hardy and Christian. Talk about the experience working with Kurt and the Gate Crashers tag team.
It was good. It was one of those things where, again, the business is crazy sometimes. I had no clue. I'd been on the road for 3 or 4 months at that time. Kurt had actually pitched him and I being a tag team way back when I first started with the company. He randomly messaged me when I was arriving at the hotel for TV one night. And he was like, "Hey man, where are you at?" And I was like, "I'm just getting to the hotel." And he goes, "So am I." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome, man." He goes, "You remember that idea I had?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "They're doing it." I was like, "Okay, cool." And initially, we were supposed to film a bunch of vignettes and stuff that were going to introduce the team, and they were going to do kind of a slower build, and for the few weeks have us just show up on tapes and stuff like that, to help kind of introduce the team. And then SmackDown, which got rewritten all the time, to the point of minutes before those doors would open type scenarios. That's what happened, and ultimately, it went from, we're going to film all this stuff to, we don't have time. You guys go have a pre-show match. And then, the next week, it was like, we don't have time to film all that. Go and debut on main event. And it was like, okay, we're not going to turn any of that down. We're not unhappy that it's happening, but it's just kind of here you are. And it was fine. It was cool. We had some good matches, but we were also going into the SummerSlam season, so we weren't necessarily a focus. They put us in good positions and we were winning and things like that, but we were just kind of existing until they could come up with something. And then, unfortunately, in the history of my time there, something happened, somebody got upset, and I was not looked upon as well anymore, and then things changed, and I was out of the company by November of 2010, I believe. So, it's just one of those things. It was good working with Kurt. Kurt's an amazing talent. I'm happy that he's still there and working. He's got his family now, and he's kicking butt, even though he's losing every match. But I think that in itself has got him his own notice because of that story that they created with him. Like I said, it was a good experience. I wish it could have been more. Unfortunately, it was not.
We're going to transition to some other stuff, but Butcher, if you have any more questions for Lance about WWE, please go ahead.
I have got one. Yeah, I have got one. I need to know it. I need to know this, Lance, because I remember me and a friend of mine. We were obviously TNA guys, and I remember my friends picking up the internet because we're more internet now friendly now than even what we were back then. And he picked up the phone. Power Slam magazine. Funny enough, he went, "You seen a WWE have signed?" I was like, "No way." I was like, "This is awesome." So, and I remember you walking out on TV, and I was like, "They only went and done it. They only went and cut his freaking hair." What are they doing? I want to know. Was that your idea? Was that something Dusty came up and said, "We're going to cut your hair, man. We're going to cut your hair." No. You know what I mean?
That's a fun story in itself. I'm glad you asked that. So, I had long hair down to the middle of my back. I had a goatee that was probably about 6 inches long, off my chin, braided. I had a long leather jacket that I wore down in FCW. Again, as WWE is many times, it's a whirlwind. I literally got an email on Saturday night saying, "We need you for TV on Tuesday." So I had no clue what was going on. They send guys on the road all the time just to take a look at them. Got to TV that Tuesday morning. I think it was Joey Styles was he's like, "Hey, we'll get information for your bio today." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'm actually debuting tonight or something." I had no clue. About 5 minutes before doors opened, myself and the gentleman that I was going to be throttling that evening were standing in the ring. Nobody else was out there. Vince and Johnny Ace, who's still in full power at the time, were standing there staring at me and the guy.
we didn't know what to do, whether we could leave or whatnot. We're just kind of standing there, and I'm like, literally, like the staff of the building are getting in their positions, about to open the doors and let people just start, filtering in to get to their seats and whatnot. And finally, Johnny was like, "Kid, come here." I was like, "What's up, Johnny?" He's like, "Cut your hair." I was like, "Okay, I'm on." He's like, "Yeah, but we gotta cut your hair." I was like, "Okay." And they cut my hair and they shaved my face. And like the first haircut was absolutely horrendous, like to the point where like they were trying to do kind of the floppy just hang there gimmick, but my hair doesn't do that, so it looked more like
a bit like Bradshaw used to have type of thing.
Not even that long though, a lot shorter. I don't know, but it looked like a Three Stooges bowl cut. They took me in to see Vince, and Vince was like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. We're gonna break you down and build you up. And I went, okay, good. And he goes, yes, now get out. So I walked out of the office, and the hairstylist lady was like, "Can I please cut it some more?" And I was like, "Do whatever you want at this point. It's already chopped." So she cut it down even more to what it was when I actually debuted. And I remember walking down the hallway, and Michael Hayes was the reason I got brought up, and I didn't know this at the time, but he was the reason. And like he's walking down the hallway and he's looking at some paperwork, and he looks up and he sees me, and he throws his hands up in the air and he goes, "Ha!" And he just turns around and walks off. And like he had no clue that they were, changing my image, and my image was part of what he liked and the reason he wanted me brought up to ECW. And like I said, it was all within minutes. And like I said, who knows what that conversation was between Vince and Johnny, but ultimately they chopped it off. Fast forward to when I was not on TV, when ECW shut down, and Kurt and I debuted. I'd grown a beard at the time, and I'd seen Vince every week. I'd shaken his hand, said hello, Mr. McMahon, and whatnot, and but he had no reason to pay attention to me, right? So Kurt and I have our debut match, just dark match or whatever. I guarantee you they just did a close-up of my face with the beard and all that. And Vince pipes into Billy Kidman, who's at the gorilla. I found all this out afterwards because we came back from the gorilla position, or from the match, and Billy was like, he's like, Vance. He goes, "Vince likes your beard." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Vince likes your beard." And I went, "Okay." And then he proceeded to tell the story at FCW that next week. And he was like, Vince piped in and was like, "Has Vance always had that beard?" And Billy's like, "Yes, sir, he's been growing it for a while, but he's had it." He goes, "I like his beard. Be sure to tell him I like it." And he's like, "Yes, sir, I'll tell him." It was just a random thing that Vince liked, and he made sure to let me know. So you never know what's going to catch Mr. McMahon's eye. It was my beard that day.
Okay.
That's brilliant.
That's awesome. Now, Lance, we're going to transition as well to New Japan coming up. We're going to talk about your recent Wrestle Kingdom match against Los Ingobernables. I did want to ask you, though, as well, Lance. You did do a run briefly with GFW, Global Force. You actually worked the match with Nick Aldis, Magnus, and I believe there was a Bullet Club match in there as well with Gallows and Anderson participated at the time. Talk about that experience.
The potential of GFW was an amazing moment, I think, in the business, because Jeff's very smart about promotion and stuff like that. I mean, heck, what he did with TNA when it started, to what the buzz that GFW, a company that didn't even exist, created with its draft and all that stuff going forward. And it was a really cool moment. And the fact that initially he was running all the baseball stadium shows and whatnot. And when Nick and I got to work, it was the only match that Nick and I have ever worked, and it was a really good match. And a random match that they had to change the card around, and they were like, "Hey, you're going to work with Nick in our main event tonight." And I was like, "Cool, let's do it." And Nick and I had a really good storytelling, big heavyweight guy match, and it was fun. And then the one and only time I got to do the tapings was us against Anderson and Gallows. And again, after hours of matches and taping in Las Vegas, we're the main event, and half the crowd had left because it's been such a long taping. But we still went out there and had a really good match, and the fans I think they really enjoyed what they got to see. And, they were like, "Lance, we just need you guys to be the monsters and crazy and get people behind it so that, blah, blah, blah." And so that's what we did. And we'd already worked with those guys many times, so it was an easy match in that sense. So it was fun, it was cool moments. Too bad and GFW as a whole never progressed to its own individual thing, but fun, quick moment in the business.
Okay. But now we're gonna do New Japan, but I just want to backtrack really quickly. One moment that I remember from Impact, you actually wrestled, I believe it was Dale Torborg at the time with that whole AJ Przinsky, the baseball stuff. Talk about that experience.
You know, again, my whole career in TNA was just an interesting flip flop from names to gimmicks to, what are we going to do and whatnot. And, they knew that the Hoytomania thing had kind of taken its own life, so this was their one and only attempt to some degree to capitalize on that. And they'd done the baseball thing, I think, a couple years before that as well. And so I was the guy that was kind of put into that position. And, they had AJ there, and they had, I can't remember the gentleman's name that was on my side. But, obviously Dale and I working together. The match was fine. It was cool. It was two big guys kind of trying to be big guys. The funny parts to that situation, and Brzezinski and I kind of became friends after that, was, we physically couldn't touch the baseball players. Like, they could do things to us, but we couldn't do anything to them. And AJ knew that, so he would take advantage of that many times, to the point where he was hitting me with chairs at one point. He kept hitting me the wrong way with the chairs. And I was giving him grief, and he would just laugh because he's like, "Ha, you can't do anything back to me." And I was like, "You bastard." But, it was a cool moment. Like I said, a little bit of eyes on us for that time because, ESPN and stuff like that were paying attention to it because it was the baseball players. And so it was a cool moment. Again, made friends, both Dale and AJ and whatnot. So, it's interesting how you meet and make friends with people in this business just on random situations.
All right, now we're going to get to Japan. So, Butcher, I'll let you start this first off because I know you have some questions about Japan.
Well, I think first, didn't you first go to Japan just before WWE? You have a stint?
I did some independent stuff, a company called Makahan, and then a company called Big Van Vader, and then I did one tour with All Japan in 2009, literally right before I finished with TNA and signed with WWE. So I'd been to Japan before, but 2011, June of 2011 was my first time working with New Japan.
And I think wasn't obviously when you debuted in 2011, you were brought into a Suzuki gun.
Yeah. So Suzuki, and it's actually pronounced, and I made the same mistake. It's called Goon, not Gun.
Goon.
English-speaking people see G-U-N and they think gun, and it's actually Goon.
Yeah.
Goon means army. So Suzuki's army. That's what it translates to. I said the same thing one time, and Suzuki was like, "Not gun, Goon." I was like, "Oh, my bad." And it just started. Like, they just had Taka Michinoku and Taichi, who were with Kojima right before that, and they turned on Kojima and joined Suzuki, and that was the initial Suzuki Goon creation. And then I was brought in as the original Gaijin member of the group, very early on. I debuted with Suzuki in a tag match against Kojima and Makabe in Osaka.
What was Minoru Suzuki actually like? 'Cause, I look at him on TV, and I've said this to Mike. He looks like a stern guy. You know what I mean? No messing. You're very, very pro Japanese from his look to his style. I think I read something like he holds 2 professional victories in MMA over Ken Shamrock, and I was like, wow.
Yep. And that's, he made his name in fighting first before he kind of got into wrestling. But he's been in wrestling for like 26, 27 years, something like that as well.
Wow.
And funny enough, my whole career in Japan's been involved around him in some aspect. Yeah. My first match ever, like we're talking about that independent company, was a tag match against him. And I remember specifically, I had no understanding of who he was and what he'd done in fighting and in wrestling and all that stuff. And there was one point where he's beating up my partner, and so I go in and stomp him to kind of get him off of him, and he doesn't do anything. He just looks at me with that evil, cold look, like, get the hell out of the ring. So I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I'm this big 6'6" monster, and I come in and I stomp him, and he just kind of looks at me like very fast and hard, and I'm just like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna get out of the ring. Like, I didn't know what to do. And then, my time in All Japan, he was actually the Triple Crown champion while I was in All Japan, and then fast forward to
New Japan. Now I'm paired with him. So my whole time in Japan, in some regard, has been involved in and around him. The wrestling guy, the wrestling personality that you see on TV is very much him when he's out there. The cool thing about Suzuki is when you're outside of pro wrestling, he can be a very good dude. He's taken care of me and the guys that have come into the company tremendously well my whole career in Japan. He takes care of us when we go out to eat and things like that. The person that is Minoru Suzuki is actually a very good person.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that comes from his true inner confidence in who he is and what he's about. And then, you get into the wrestling, the fact that he is such a badass dude as far as being a fighter, the history of his time in fighting, and then the character that he can present for pro wrestling, I think is what truly makes him a unique element in the business. Because a lot of times fighters don't have that personality. Fighters are fighters. They're bad dudes and they can beat you up in real life, but you put them in front of a camera and tell them, all right, now entertain me. Most of them can't. And then there's opposite, guys who are truly entertaining and couldn't beat up a leaf. He is a good combination of both. He can tear your foot off and stick it in your mouth if he felt like it, and he can make you, laugh and go crazy and believe in everything he does and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say this as well. One of the big highlights in your New Japan run as well, you guys won the 2011 Tag League. I mean, you guys wrestled guys like John Bernard and Carl Anderson, Suzuki, Yano. Just talk about that whole experience in the 2011 Tag League.
Especially since it was my first year within the company, it was really cool. New Japan got behind me. Like, this business is about the relationships you make with the people that you meet and stuff, more so than what you can do in the ring many times, because it still is entertainment. And when I was coming into New Japan, the only thing they knew through the people who contacted them for me was that I was a big guy and I just finished WWE. So they were like, okay, we'll give him a chance to see what he looks like. I showed up in Philadelphia, which was the first time they did like a U.S. excursion, and it was very much oh, I know you. They know me. They'd met me at TNA. They met me at WWE. Different guys from Tiger Hattori to Tanahashi to different guys who'd come in and out at different places that I've worked with and met at different times. And so I went from, oh, we have no clue who this guy is to, oh, we know who this guy is. Mm-hmm. And then, again, my attitude, I believe, was the right way and the right one. And it went from, okay, you have one match where it's basically a tryout match, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, can you just go ahead and stay for another 2 weeks while we do this stuff and do more with you? And I was like, well, heck yeah. So being a part of the G1 Climax my first year in 2011, that was my second tour. Like, I came, did my debut, did a few matches, and then my next tour was the G1. The G1 isn't what it is today, but in Japan it's always kind of been that, and that was an amazing experience all around. To fast forwarding to the Tag League when they put Suzuki and I together and we won the Tag League. It was a really cool experience. Unfortunately, my first year I didn't get to be a part of the Tokyo Dome, but everything else before that and after that has been just absolutely amazing. The different teams and whatnot. Since Smith and I have been together, we've had countless number of matches with Tenzan and Kojima, who are absolute legends in all of Japanese wrestling. And if you're a wrestling fan altogether, you know who they are and what they've done. And they really were the ones that truly made KES in the beginning, because without them and what they did for us and how many times they put our big butts over, I don't think we would have been what we've been.
And the thing, too, is you guys also got to, we see the progression of Prince Devitt, Finn Balor, you look at Nakamura and guys like that. You guys were in there with them as far as, when you first got in there as well. Talk about working with guys like Nakamura, Devitt, and then to see their progression to where they are now.
Yeah, again, I was there, obviously Devitt was a junior when I first started, and then his advancement into the heavyweight division of New Japan and getting to work with him on a more consistent basis, working with him in the New Japan Cup, working with him in the G1, working with him in the Tag League, things like that, you can't say enough about his ability. And then, Nakamura, who's the youngest IWGP champion back in the day when New Japan's business wasn't very good, but then advancing to what it has become, and him
really taking that Intercontinental title, because they kept it on him so long and he defended it so many times against so many good talents, elevating that title to a place where, a title that ultimately headlined a Wrestle Kingdom one time over a fan vote, and that plays a lot to his personality. And Tanahashi, him and Tanahashi at that Wrestle Kingdom main event, voted on by the fans. You can't say enough about him and his personality and his ability as a star to carry the company. So getting to work with both those guys and the different styles and the different personalities that both of them carry, only helped me in my career, and it was a lot of fun, getting to work with them. And then the number of talents, Tanahashi, who, in my opinion, at one point, and even to degrees now, is the best wrestler all around in the world. So I've been very, very lucky, beyond blessed in my time in all of my career, but especially in Japan.
I'll say this. I mean, Wrestle Kingdom. I mean, we've said it. Butch and I, we talk about. I mean, it's already 2018. It's the start, and it's already like the show of the year because top to bottom.
we did that last year. We watched Wrestle Kingdom last year, and straight away on the 4th of January we said it's the best pay-per-view of 2017. and I don't think we were wrong. And I would go as far as saying it's exactly going to be the same this year. That might sound ignorant to some people, but
it was a great show.
I've developed this kind of thing for New Japan where it represents everything that I look for as a fan.
Absolutely.
And that's it.
Yeah, as far as wrestling is concerned, I don't think actual wrestling is concerned. I don't think anybody produces a show bigger and better.
Absolutely, dude. And I mean, you guys had a very prominent role in this. You guys wrestled Evil and Sonata Los Ingobernables. I mean, just talk about this year. I mean, we had so many great matches from Omega and, Omega and Jericho, Naito and Okada. I mean, we had the junior match with Ospreay, Skrull, just those guys. Just everything from top to bottom, again, like we stated, was tremendous. Just talk about this year's Wrestle Kingdom, man. I know you guys are no longer the IWG Tag Champs, but, man, I really did enjoy the work that was in that match.
Yeah, I mean, for us, and it's funny because I've been with New Japan since 2011, and this was our third time going in as the tag champs. And actually, Smith and I are the last tag team champions to go into Wrestle Kingdom and defend our titles and keep them, and that was Wrestle Kingdom 7. It's one of those things where it's a new day and age for New Japan with the New Japan World and the number of eyes that are watching New Japan around the world, and the excursions they're doing both in the U.S. and the U.K. and they just announced one we're doing in Australia in February. The company as a whole is truly becoming a worldwide company. So people watching that show that aren't Japanese and haven't been following New Japan religiously, it was the first time seeing a lot of people wrestle. And for me, it was funny because I had so many people commenting. We had our match, and it was a really good match. It was a simple, strong. We dominated the crap out of that match because physically our size. I think people forget how big Smith and I are until we're standing in front of the people they think are big, and then they're like, "Holy crap, those guys are monsters!" And that's the role we played. And the match itself was just we monstered the crap out of them. Like they had no idea what they were getting into, and then they were able to capitalize in the end, which I think told a great story, and it was a very different match than the rest of the show. It wasn't just a 50-50 match where guys were just all doing their thing, which I'm not taking anything away from anybody in that sense. But, for a match that wasn't given a ton of buzz, we created our own buzz by doing something different and cool. I like to believe anyway. Me and my insane entrance with emptying water.
I was going to say that to you, Lance. You took bottle swilling to another level. Triple H got nothing on you, brother.
I've been doing that for 3 years now, but it was just because this was the first real time that a lot of people have seen it. It caught a lot of people off guard. Like Bubba Dudley made mention of it. Again, I've been doing this for a long time as far as the crazy water going into the crowds and spitting water and throwing the water bottles, but it was just fun for a lot of new people to see that. So for us, it was a really, even in defeat, I think we opened a lot of people's eyes to our ability and our value to the business and whatnot. And so I'm really proud of what we were able to accomplish in a whole, especially a part of a show that had 9 matches, and it was 5 hours long, and you had highlight matches obviously Okada and Naito, you had Jericho and Omega, and things that were given a lot of attention, and for a lot of people to have stopped and paid attention to what we did in a positive way, I think it was a really cool thing.
Now, I actually wanted to touch base, and Butch, you can also chime in this as well, because we were going to talk about Noah, talk about that invasion. I mean, I know you guys wrestled great tag teams like Mikey Nichols and Shane Haste. You know the whole thing with Marufuji and Yano, Go Shiozaki and Taniguchi. I mean, talk about the Noah experience.
You know, the Noah experience for us was a good thing. You know, at the time with the New Japan, we didn't really have anything storyline-wise set up. I think LIJ had just started. Bullet Club was crazy big over. We'd been there for a while. You know, and the business has its ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And we were, you know, in one of those, don't want to say low periods, but we just weren't a focal point. So for the chance for us to go to Noah and dominate the way we did, it helped keep us, you know, within Japan, it helped keep us in a very strong position. Help put a light on us instead of us just disappearing and not being anywhere. Now we're working. Now we're, like I said, dominating. You know, Smith and I were the Noah GHC tag team champions for like over a year and a half. We had the record number of title defenses of 10. I think it was 10 or 11 by the end of it. Like you said, got to work with teams like Dangan Yankees, Yano and Marufuji, obviously Shane and Mikey. Big in USA, Colt Cabana and Chris Hero several times. We wrestled War Machine in Noah. You know, War Machine's first introduction into Japan was working at Noah with us. And, you know, it was a really cool thing getting to do all that. You know, the first year was really cool. I think the fans were really into the story and they understood what was going on. You know, we finished off that first year, 2015, at a big show in Tokyo, and like we sold it out, and people were really wanting the storyline. Business-wise, financially, you know, it was a good thing that it kept going for another year. But I think for Noah, I think unfortunately the storyline was the exact same for another year, and it kind of lost a lot of steam that second year that we were there. And then, you know, Noah randomly got sold to somebody, and nobody knew that was happening. So that completely changed everything, you know, good and bad for us and for Noah and for the whole business as a whole. So overall, the experience for us was great. You know, we were two-time GHC champions. We were longest reigning and stuff like that. So it just helped continue the lore that was KES, and then Suzuki-gun as a whole, you know, stayed strong throughout the whole process.
Butch, I'll hand it over to you as well. Any other questions for Lance as far as New Japan Noah's concerned, as far as the Japan run?
I mean, you returned to New Japan, and 2017, obviously after Noah, but obviously you had all the turmoil over were you going to get a new deal, you know, where were you going to end up? I mean, clearly you're happy to go back to New Japan, right, as were, you know, myself, because I think I would say you've grown as, you know, in you know, stature and in person. I mean, you know, I think, like you said, when you referred to AJ, you go to New Japan and you develop a new, like a new persona, as such. You know, and I think when I read that you were going back to New Japan, and I obviously seen you on TV, I was happy. And as soon as they put the straps on you, I was ecstatic. You know, I thought, yes, you know, this is clearly, you know, they have an intention. And I mean, you know, your Smash Mouth style, it's something else, you know, to watch. I mean, I'm so glad that New Japan have let you, you know, almost develop your own character,
well, yeah,
you know?
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you said that. And 2017 for me was kind of a crazy year because, you know, talking about the return, when we made the return on New Year's Dash last year, it started the first New Beginning tour, and then that's when I had my injury where my sciatic situation turned into a full herniation and had to have surgery while I was in Japan. So, you know, I spent the first real 7 months of 2017 on the shelf, worked my butt off to get back, you know, did everything I could, you know, rehab-wise, and then to be brought back and at the final day of the G1 this year was a really cool and emotional moment, and then, like you said, to have the straps put back on us. and you're talking about the development. The one thing I tell guys time and time again when they're asking me, what's been the best part of my time in Japan, or what's helped me the most and whatnot. Ever since I joined New Japan back in 2011, I've very rarely been told, no, don't do that. And unfortunately, in the business, especially on higher levels, a lot of times guys are told, okay, do this, no, don't do that, no, don't do that, no, you can't do that, no, this isn't right, da 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 da. A lot of no's. So there's a lot of guys who spend a lot of time trying to figure out what they're supposed to do, what they can and can't do, and it hinders development. Whereas in Japan, the one thing I was always said when I first came in to now, it's like, that's great, but more monster, more big, more strong, more monster. And I was like, okay, I'll give you more. And as time went on, I just continued to develop it and do more and more big and crazy and monstrous things, and to the point where, like I said, with the water bottles, people run up to me for me to spit water at them now. In America, some people complain about it, but in Japan, they absolutely love it. They call it the holy water. So it's been fun, beyond to say the least.
Now, before we're getting close to the end here, and Lance, I'll say this right now, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and anytime you definitely want to come back on here as well, I'd be more than happy to have you on.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So I want to ask you as well, being the ring veteran that you are, I mean, like we mentioned, going in 18 years now, do you have any advice for any guy or gal that, wants to pursue or get into professional wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, I do seminars once in a while, and I've helped with some people, I had, and I'm not putting myself over, it's been mentioned on WWE, I had a little bit of a hand in helping Ember Moon and whatnot, and the success she's having now is absolutely solely on her. She's busted her butt from beginning to end, but, I was able to help in the early parts and training and stuff like that, and some of the stuff that I've told her and told other people, and again, it sounds like I'm name dropping, and if I am, I apologize, it's just putting it out there. I always tell guys and girls, especially at this day and age, when they're watching independent wrestling, there's a lot of focus on just the moves, and guys and girls are trying to, in my opinion, do way too much, way too often, and the business is turning into gifts where it's like all they're seeing are the 15, 20, 30 seconds of spots that guys and girls are doing. And then you have to put together a whole match, whether that be 15, 20, 30 minutes, however long. And unfortunately, there's very, very few guys that can do 15, 20, 30 minutes of amazing spots at a level and a speed that makes it entertaining. Most guys and girls, in my opinion, are always trying to do way too much, way too hard, and it comes off very broken and kind of messed up. And I tell guys and girls all the time, I'm like, if people come to a show and they watch your match and you do some amazing moves, but then the next guy comes out and they do more amazing moves, or they do the same move and they do it a little bit faster and a little bit better. If all they're remembering are the moves and not you as a entertainer, a professional wrestler, then in my opinion, you've not done your job. You failed in essence, because if somebody can go and do it faster and better and stronger, and the move is what they're paying attention to, and if they're leaving going, oh my God, that crazy move, and they can't remember your name, then you're not succeeding. But if they leave and the only person they're talking about is you, and they want to see you on every show because of the personality you created along with the movesets that you have, then you're succeeding, because then no matter what you do, you can be successful and people will want to see you. Joey Ryan is a great example of that, in my opinion. Whether people agree with his wrestling style or not, he's a guy that's created a personality and a persona on the wrestling world scene that everybody wants to see. And he's not going out there and doing a zillion spots. He's not going out there and doing a ton of crazy moves off the biggest things he can find to jump off of. He's created a personality that everybody has to absolutely see. And I'm not saying that everybody can or needs to be Joey Ryan, but that's a prime example of somebody creating a character that everybody goes, I want to see Joey Ryan, because I want to see Joey Ryan do his dick flip. I want to see Joey Ryan be sleazy. I want to see Joey Ryan take his sucker and stick it down his pants and put it in somebody's mouth. I want to see Joey Ryan do what he does. And that's succeeding, in my opinion. Again, regardless of what you feel about his wrestling style or not, he's creating something that is truly successful in this business. And I think if you think about the ones who've truly been
phenomenal and successful in this business. The Undertaker is a great example of somebody who's been
Yeah.
beyond adaptable. And what does everybody want to see with the Undertaker? They want to hear the gong. They want to see the entrance. They want to feel the aura that is the Undertaker. And everything else he does, they absolutely love because he's the Undertaker. It's not because he's going out and doing the most insane moves in the world. He has great matches or solid matches every time he wrestles, but there's nothing that you go, I got to see his move. You want to see him and the aura and the personality he creates. John Cena, is a great example of somebody now who, love him or hate him, he absolutely every single time gets a reaction. People go insane, whether they're chanting he sucks or whether they're loving him and cheering him till they're blue in the face. John Cena is a guy that nobody ever forgets. It's not because of his moves, it's because of him. So I guess that's my advice to guys and girls who are starting out in the business, who are in the business right now. Create a personality that people remember you, your name, and who you are more so than just the moves you do, because somebody else out there will always be able to do those moves bigger, better, and faster. And again, if that's all they remember, then you'll be replaced like that.
Okay. Butcher, I'll hand it over to you. Any final questions for Lance?
I just want to know what's next. What's next? What does 2018 hold for Lance Archer?
Well, me, I think my whole career has been constantly trying to move forward and prove people wrong and open people's eyes to who I've always, in my belief, been and can become. Again, 18 years in this business, I'm no spring chicken, but I believe I have a lot more to prove and to give to this business. And as far as New Japan is concerned, who knows what's going to happen. KES, I think, obviously is a established team. I think we truly made a new mark for ourselves at Wrestle Kingdom. So who knows what's going to happen for the future of KES as far as the tag team division is concerned. My hope is that in some capacity I get a chance to be seen as an individual, not anything against the team, just one chance to truly make my mark as an individual. And if that comes, great. If not, it's not a big deal, man. I'm very happy and proud of my career. I will always continue to push forward, move forward, and do better. And I'm hoping, again, to just open some more eyes in 2018 and going forward as to who I am, and people going, man, where's this guy been? And holy crap, I can't wait to see, like you said, what's next.
I think that's the thing, Lance. I think that's the thing where New Japan's going now. Is it's bringing in a brand new variety of fans that they may have heard of New Japan and they may have seen clips on YouTube, but have they really watched New Japan? And for people that have tuned in to Wrestle Kingdom and seen your performance there, my brother, you stood out. You stood out. So if like I heard Kevin Kelly saying that 10,000 people, they've got an extra 10,000 subs from the UK and around the world alone. That's 10,000 people that tuned into your match and said, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
So, you and Davey, Sanada and Evil did yourselves proud as far as I'm concerned. Ain't no one gonna take that away from you.
Thank you.
My sentiments exactly. Butcher pretty much nailed it right there. So, Lance, please feel free to promote your social media, your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and please promote some upcoming events as well that you got going on with Japan.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Anybody can reach out to me. Obviously, at Lance Hoyt is my Twitter. My DMs are open if you want to send me a message. As long as you don't say anything silly, I'll answer it back. Facebook is Lance Hoyt. It's open in public. Again, you can send me a message or pay attention to it anytime you want. Instagram is Lance_Hoyt. Check out some of the pictures and videos that I'll post, and I kind of pretty much only promote the wrestling business. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of personal stuff out there. Upcoming shows. I have 2 shows this weekend in Texas for Lions Pride Sports in Caldwell, Texas, and College Station, Texas. Then I've got a show in Dallas called IWR that's going to feature guys like Sting and whatnot, as far as just doing autographs, and you got MVP and guys like that are going to actually be wrestling. And then on the 25th, again around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, a new company called Pro Wrestling Religion I'll be wrestling Brian Cage, the effing machine, on that one, and then I've got a bunch of other stuff. Like I said, just got announced the New Japan Australian tour that's going to take place February 16th through the 19th in different cities. I'm a part of that. A lot of cool things happening around the independent world in Texas and beyond, and then hopefully be back in New Japan before too long. Nothing's been announced yet as far as getting back to Japan, but some stuff is coming for sure.
Awesome. And Lance, any final words for the fans that have supported you for this long now? Any final words for the fans?
Hey, the American Psycho Lance Archer says, thank you very much. You're very smart, and otherwise I'd be kicking your ass.
All right. So, for myself and the Butcher, we both thank you very much for your time today, and we'll definitely do this again down the line. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, Lance.
Thank you very much, guys.
All righty. So, for the Butcher, my name is Mike Larkin. This concluded another interview. Thanks very much for listening. Peace.